And we are live.
Hey, look at that. It's Dire Bear Adventuring Company with a little bit of a different setup today. As you can notice, there is no Roll20 sitting around us. We're in a little different arrangement. And as you can see, there are only 1, 2, 3 of us. It's arranged differently on my screen than it is on the host screen. So anyways, there's only 3 of us here today. Myself, Heath, the Dire Bear GM. We have Maddie, who usually plays Callista, and we have Jack, who plays Yenfear. Tonight's episode is a bit postponed because I want to talk about a few things. One of them being burnout. Not that I'm burned out. Trust me, that's nothing could be farther from the truth. No, not even a little bit. I love what I do. And I love writing the stories, and I love seeing the faces, and a couple of you in this room those 2 people right up there can attest that I actually get really hard on myself whenever I miss a session as a DM, to the point where I will forego my own health and well-being sometimes to make sure that I can make it for my players, because I love watching the jaw drops. I love watching everything, all of it, every second of it. The, oh, I didn't see that coming, or the, ha, I knew it. Figuring out the puzzles, everything. It's all important to me. However, we have to make sure that we take care of ourselves, both mentally as well as physically. And that is what I want to talk about tonight. Tonight, as you can tell, it's very low key. It's not going to be running a Foundations of Adelar, although we will be back next week. One of the things is, did you catch that?
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. One of the things that we've got going on is that we are just kind of all in the mood right now to take a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a break, and it's necessary to do that. If you play every other week, that's awesome. You may have that time in there. But if you're running upwards of 6 campaigns, sometimes it's okay to take a step back and take a breather. Your players will understand, especially since they know that if you have that time, you can actually make an even better campaign. So, this week, you're going to take a breather. What are you doing with your time? This is really important as a DM. This is the time you can take to prepare for when you come back. Sometimes a breather is a great thing to have in place of an actual game. The session is running and you're doing well. You love every second of it. But you hit a spot where you weren't quite prepared for. You can use the take a breather to write the next section, evolve characters, redesign things that you thought they're just not working. It's important to remember to always take a breather every once in a while. It helps you avoid burnout. You can use that time to develop something more creative, better. Work with your players to develop backstories that may come into play in the regular game. And most of all, just take care of yourself. Your mental health is important to you as it is to the players. It keeps us from getting short-tempered and everything else like that. That being said, this last week was pretty much full of breathers for me. My Tuesday campaign, I took a night off. I didn't run anything Friday night because of a competition that was going here, which, congratulations, the Rock 2018, that's Realms of Clicks, Hero Clicks tournament was held here at Lucky Dice Cafe, and we had a winner who walked away with $4,000 as well.
Sweet. Nice.
We were packed to the gills in the store, so I did not run anything because I didn't want to try to have all that going on while trying to run a one-shot. And then on Sunday, I took a breather as well and played in a Twilight 2000 campaign. I'm not sure if I'm going to be playing again. I actually like the guys. But if I can have my Sunday to run Adventure League, I would probably do that. But considering that Twilight 2000 only runs like once a month, probably no problem. It was really good for me to take a breather because of the fact that I also had a chance to get some downtime before my conventions started coming up because after this weekend, that'll be the 28th, the 3rd and the 4th, I'll be at NerdCon, so I'll be up there in Huntsville all day, and then on the 9th, 10th, and 11th, I'll be in Huntsville all day again. As the 9th, we're running something for Realms of Ravnica. Saturday, I'll be running Realms of Ravnica in the morning. I'll be running at the HamaCon MiniCon, and then on Sunday, I'll be back up at Lucky Dice again, running Realms of Ravnica for the release. So I will have a very busy couple of weeks in a row, and it gives me time to sit down and write more stuff and things like that. Which brings me to our next topic. And real quick, Maddie, I'm not sure if you're seeing this. I've got remaining time in the meeting of like 6 minutes. I don't know if you have that same thing.
Yeah, I do. I'm on
so
it.
I don't know if we're gonna
I'm on
cut
it.
out. Okay, cool. So she's got it. That's the topic of that. I'm done. Take a breather. It's important. So tonight we're going to just chill out, the three of us. We may have a few more that drop in and say hi. And we just want to take some time to field any questions that the three of you
But all three of us.
But we also want to talk about character creation, story writing, role-playing in general, and just matter of all sorts of fun things that kind of go along that way. So I know for me, character, especially considering how many NPCs I come up with, thank you Wednesday night with 120 different crew members.
That's just dedication.
That's because I love you guys. But character creation's on our own level. I know that I've lost more characters than I care to count. And I know that we always come up with cool concepts. Oh, I want to play this, such as the thug turned cleric that I play in every other Saturday that Maddie runs. Brimlow Hanagar, who is not opposed to burning down a windmill that has goblins in it or chucking goblins out of windows. He doesn't care. They're goblins. What do they mean to him?
Yeah.
He's brash. He's hard-nosed. He doesn't take much shit from anyone. But he's a nice guy.
Question mark?
Question mark.
We don't know.
So far, he's been a very mixed bag for me as the DM. Just when I think I've got a handle on him, I get thrown for a loop as he sets a windmill on fire.
Guys, I can manage the Twitch channel right now. Do you want me to change the title and the tags? Add some tags?
Yeah,
Sure.
Go for it if you want to.
Okay.
Do you want to change it to talk show?
Yep.
I think so.
Okay. And we fixed the minute thing. I just upgraded
Thanks,
my...
baby.
Look at you.
Talk shows and podcasts.
That sounds great.
Okay, let's go. AMA.
Welcome all 5 of you now.
Yeah.
As you can see, the format's a little different now. We might work on this throughout the week to see if we can't make this our permanent format, and then we can put
That'd be
something
sweet.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
that face right there.
Yeah. I agree.
We're all on board. You and I are on board. Maddie's like,
no, you motherfucker.
no.
Maddie's like, please understand that I have to stream all of this shit!
What? You don't have magical internets?
Hey, do you want to add the tags auditory ASMR? No, I'm just
Yes.
No.
What about ballroom dance? Is ballroom dance applicable?
Ballroom dancing, definitely.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes works.
Character creation. I'm gonna add as many tags as I can find.
Do it up. So you were saying about character creation, Cap. While I was handling fixing the... You only have X amount of minutes left.
Character creation. So for me, I always come up with a concept. I got a lot of concepts bouncing around my head. I've always wanted to play a cleric in the trickery domain who has a charlatan background and make him a walking, talking, good faith healer, like the evangelical. I have a tent outside, He's talking to the guy in the back, in the who canvassed the crowd, they've got Mark sitting there, and he's like, in his head, he's casting message, but he goes, I see there's Lawanda on the 3rd row. Is it Lawanda? Lawanda, I heard that you were dealing with pressures. Just make him a good old-fashioned, just a good charlatan, like a charlatan should be. I don't know how I could slip him into certain campaigns, but it's an idea that I had. But Brimlow had been one that I've been kicking around for a while. I wanted to play this cleric who had all of these, who was a tempest, who has the belief that there are two sides to every storm. There is the life-giving rain and winds that come and return the nature to the way it should be. The calm, peaceful flow of water against a roof or pattering on the leaves. And then there's the other side. Sure power and destruction. Raw in its nature. And he just smiles at you and says, yeah, I'm not that first one at all. And so Brimlow came to be. And he's a lot of fun. I've got several characters, but my character generation always starts with concept. What do I want to have? And how close can I get to it within the rule setting? Some rule settings are different, like, for instance, my swashbuckler that I make in every campaign somewhere at some point in time. Not in every campaign, but a lot of them. In 7th C, it works a lot better. Now it works in 5th edition with the rogue swashbuckler subclass, but for me, I always come up with the concept first. What about you guys?
I tend to pick the class that I want to play, and then I create a character around that. If I know what my party's composition is, if I'm coming in after the party's already been set, I might pick something that complements the party. So if the party doesn't have a front line, maybe I'll play a fighter, or I'll play a paladin, you know? Or if I'm playing Pathfinder, I'll play a fucking Inquisitor, because, you know, that's always fun.
Game breaking.
But I think I'm gonna stick with 5e, just because that's the one I've created the most characters for. Playing Curse of Strahd, which was the very first campaign I ever played fully with you, Cap. I wanted to make a rogue. I wanted to be an assassin, and I wanted to make a rogue. It seemed to me that that's what would fit in a land where everything was going wrong, nothing was going right. This is the land for people with regrets.
Yeah.
And that is how I came up with Aethlin. He's a rough kid from the streets, grew up on the streets, found himself in the middle of a gang, trying to steal from the wrong people. Instead of killing him, they said, well, your skills are better than some of the people that we've actually trained, so we're going to take you on. Your life belongs to us, and no matter what, you have to do what we say.
Right.
They started by sending him written jobs to do. And when they realized that they weren't getting done, they started sending actual messengers. Because, little known fact, Aethlin can't actually read. Not because they didn't try and teach him, because they absolutely did.
He just wasn't having any of it.
But because, and Jack and I talked about this a little while ago, he suffers from dyslexia.
Oh.
So he can't read. He can read, but it takes him a very long time, and he feels ridiculously stupid trying to read. Which is why during Curse of Strahd, if anything ever needed to be read, he handed it off to Rollin, or Bell, or their paladin. He handed it off to anybody else so he wouldn't have to read. And wouldn't have to show that weakness. And I wanted to have my assassin have just a touch of morality. He needed something to be working towards that wasn't just, I kill whoever I want.
Right.
So that played a heavy part.
So
it had an effect. Yes.
He wound up taking assassination jobs because they paid the most, because he has a daughter who is a young girl who paid him to kill somebody who was abusing her.
Yeah, I read that story actually. It's,
that was good shit, by the way.
And he did so, didn't take her money, took her in, wound up finding an elderly couple to care for her while he was raising enough money to, properly care for her. And then he landed this major job going to Barovia.
How'd that work out?
Not great.
No.
Not great at all.
Yeah, I nearly killed them all.
Yeah, wasn't TripAdvisor ratings were about a solid 2.
The Yelp review on the
just terrible. Should have looked at Yelp before we went.
Barovia, 1 star. Would not do again.
What about you, Jack? How do you create your characters?
Oh God.
No, wait. I have a theory. Jack creates all of their characters by simply throwing the book in the air and whatever lands.
I mean, you're actually close. Like, okay.
You got like slips of paper that you have written like general adjectives on, and then you just gotta throw them in the air.
I Mad Lib everything. I just fucking.
God, no wonder your characters are such nervous messes.
No, that's just me projecting.
It's a character sheet, not a Mad Lib sheet. When it says character and race, or class and race, you're supposed to put some thought into it.
My mistake. No, it depends on the character. I mean, like, Rollin, for example. Like I said, and I always say every time I get a chance to, is he's one of the oldest character. I think he was like my first official original character I ever made that was like not based on a fandom. So, he just kind of sat in a cupboard for like a decade or so, not being used. And I was like, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know. You're a good kid. But I had no use for him at the time. And then when I met and got talking to Maddie and eventually met you, when I finally got to take part in the Dungeons and Dragons, I was really struggling. I was struggling trying to figure out who I should play. I'm like, oh God, I don't know. I've never made characters really like with a backstory or anything. And then I was like, oh yeah, I have that one character from a decade ago. I can just use.
So long ago.
Yeah. So for him, he was already made. So I had like the foundation already there, and then I just added on to it using, whatever tools you get creating characters in Dungeons and Dragons, which worked out because everything I had for his story had a component game-wise that would work, right? So I didn't have to meta everything and then just be like, oh, okay, well, in his backstory, he is a noble, yes. He is a noble. And
background.
And he's a magic user, so definitely fit. Being a
penchant for fireball for
Quintrell. a little bit for Quintrell. Only for Quintrell. Yeah, pyromania. That came later on in life. Okay,
it really.
I think
did.
that
was a quirk that we discovered as we played.
So for him,
a sorcerer, so that way at least you get to take the careful spell meta magic, and that way you get to just fireball, except for you.
Yeah. See, okay, well, I would have, but it wouldn't have fit his personality, which is really funny because he's kind of a nervous wreck, shut in hermit. So
So different from Yenfear, who is a nervous wreck, but just not a shut-in.
Not a shut-in, a nervous wreck, but also extremely
like a
boisterous.
macaw in a room full of unknown people. So colorful, but yet so twitchy.
Yeah, he's just...
And then there's Jarnek.
He doesn't communicate with words, he communicates with music.
And then there's Jarnek, who is also a nervous wreck.
I think it's just me projecting at this point.
I think at this point in time, we're just like, you're self-inserting. It's just...
it's just an OC.
Also,
No,
I would like to... Sorry, Jack, just before you continue. I would like to point out that self-inserting when you're playing D&D is not a bad thing.
No.
There is no personality you know better than your own.
True.
Like, if I wasn't a pacifist, I would absolutely be a fucking assassin.
Yeah, I just like was... When did I have this eureka moment, where I was just laying there thinking about Aethlin, and I'm like, oh my god! Aethlin is just Maddie. Like, just straight up, like, if Maddie killed people...
I will honestly
and was
say,
a dude, like...
the most I've seen Maddie play off character is as Callista.
Yeah.
Like...
Callie is like...
How hard is that?
Very. Actually, it's really hard. Playing somebody who gets really nervous, who's really scared to show who they actually are.
Especially since you're not.
I'm not. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so comfortable with who I am. Playing Callista is actually a challenge. And that's another part of why I wrote her the way I did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only part that's not difficult is her infatuation with Gillet. That's really easy to RP.
You're like,
because...
no, that's just me.
That's just me.
I would encourage everyone that, while you're right, self-insert is not bad, and it's easy for you to develop a personality. I encourage people to step outside the box. If you look at the difference between all of my characters that I've had over the years, you've got Brimlow, who's this rough and tumble guy who's more about getting the job done, kicking down the door, and asking permission later, versus Sanrael, who is this kind of easygoing, happy-go-lucky, just kind of wants to just have a good time, at the surface. And underneath, he's a protector. He was an orphan. He grew up on the streets, and he ultimately has that grain of taking care of the younger kids who are also orphans, and so that's just kind of stuck with him over the years. And then you have Cyric, who is probably the closest I have to a self-insert, because he's a protector of everyone. He always goes first. He'll put everybody else in front of himself, as far as like their needs.
Mm-hmm.
He will, ultimately carry the weight of everything that the party has on his own shoulders without asking for help, much to his detriment. And that's who he is. And ultimately his background shows it, But then I have Barius Welling, who absolutely, for some reason, is so well loved because he's so charismatic. And Dominic
I love him so much.
And you've got Dom, who says, all of 12 words in a given conversation. He's just this towering, man-shaped mountain.
I love him too.
Who doesn't fight with conventional weapons. He uses 2 wooden batons. Because if he has to pull the sword off of his back,
then you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
It's just not good.
It's not good, yeah.
So I encourage you, though, it's easy to fall into that, but I encourage everybody out there who's creating a character to create a personality for that character so off from what you are, because it opens up a whole new realm of role play, which ultimately that's what these are. They're tabletop role-playing games. And that's, if I just wanted to kill the monster, loot the treasure, I'd play Munchkin, or on an arcade system or console, I would play like Street Fighter or something. Kids still play Street Fighter? I'm so old.
They do.
Yep.
They do.
To the degree, though, I've been doing this for, as I've mentioned before, 28 years now, roughly. And like I said, I've created so many characters, like the elf. I played 2nd edition as one of the first ones that I started with, where your mages had 4 HP, and I constantly played mages.
Fuck yeah, mages.
glutton for punishment, I guess. But I had an elf who had a shaved head, and his head was tattooed. One of the first spells I took was Tensor's Floating Disc, all because I could cast it, sit on it, and then like levitate myself everywhere I wanted to go.
Nice, very nice.
My friends who said, no, elves wouldn't do that. I said, yeah, well, my elf does.
This one does.
This one does. So hey, whatever. But character creation is great, and I encourage everybody to use things like Mythweaver or D&D Beyond, which you can create characters from. Look into homebrews. There's several different tumblers out there with homebrew stuff.
Yeah.
Just be careful when you're creating your homebrew characters. There's a lot of them really OP.
Yeah.
So be careful, and if you want to bring a homebrew in, I encourage it, but make sure you talk to your DM about it and things like that. A lot of the games that you see us play, especially when it comes to like the Foundations of Adelar, I generally tend to stick with WotC approved, strictly Wizards of the Coast. I don't even go to like the Kobold Press or Green Ronin, which are sanctioned, they're approved, they've got the right to do all of this stuff. It's because what's available in SRD and free to people are the core rules. And if I have somebody who wants to sit in at this game, I want to make sure that they have access and easy access to a rule set, so that way they're not, having to purchase a bunch of stuff, because a lot of the times it's an introduction to the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to feel like they're not having to make an investment, but that they get so indoctrinated in that first session that they go and purchase everything.
Indoctrinated. It's an interesting word to use, but yeah. I think shit, I had something I wanted to say. It's gone. It's gone. Goodbye. I think one good thing about character creation is it gives you an opportunity to play a character that has an aspect of either yourself or an aspect that you're interested in that you don't necessarily possess, right? Or you can play around with personalities and I think what a lot of people who are new to character creation that I've seen a lot is they're afraid to give their character flaws. And that was definitely me with Roland at first. I was like, oh no, he's my sweet boy, he's so perfect. And then I destroyed him. But no,
I helped.
You did. Thank you. Now he has PTSD. Thanks a lot. No, it's important to make, like, if you want your character to be believable, and if you want it's one thing to have a character, but I think what's most fun is making a character that is relatable, in the sense that, they have flaws, they have, like, they're selfish, or they can act in ways that aren't completely pure and virtuous and two-dimensional, because it can get boring really fast.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that, because going on to another topic that I love is comic books. Talking about making flaws, that was one of the